WING, Dayton's ESPN Radio. The Justin Kinner Show, right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, happy Friday. We welcome you in live here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. I'm Justin Kinner. It is the Justin Kinner Show. We are brought to you by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. All right, lot to get into here today as we wrap up the week. We head into a busy weekend. Ohio State going to be in action against Minnesota. They welcome in their Big Ten opponent tomorrow night at the Shoe, 7:30 the kickoff. You can catch it right here on 1410 ESPN Radio and our sister station, Z93. How about that? The return of Z93. People have been screaming for the return of Z, and it is officially back. I'm so excited about that. That was pretty cool watching that up close and personal yesterday as they flipped that station. So Z93 is back. Z93 along with 1410 ESPN Radio is Dayton's radio home for Ohio State football, and we have all that for you coming up this weekend. Bengals going to be in action against the Lions as they try to avoid getting destroyed and embarrassed for the third straight week. We're going to open up with that. And then the Dillon Gabriel era, well, it begins this Sunday in London. The Cleveland Browns trotting out another starting quarterback. So we'll see what exactly happens at the end of the day. But sorry, I got distracted reading that. Let's open up with the Bengals. Because we all know that the Bengals have problems. We all know that without Joe Burrow, even with Joe Burrow, I didn't give this team a whole heck of a lot of a chance to make the playoffs, not because of Joe Burrow, but because of what was lacking around him. No run game, no offensive line, and the defense stinks. So, again, it's a broken record with me constantly going there. But, again, stop me when I'm telling lies. There's the offensive line that's bad. They can't run the football. The defense is bad. And now they can't throw the football. In fact, they were so good at throwing the football that it made up for the fact that they couldn't run the football. They were so good at throwing the football, it somehow made you overlook the fact that they couldn't protect the quarterback. They were so good at throwing the football that it kind of made you forget that they can stop anybody because their defense stinks. Their pass game was so good that it basically masked a lot of deficiencies, but the bottom line is the win-loss record, that could not be saved. That cannot be saved. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But now here we are in the last 2 weeks since losing Joe Burrow. The Cincinnati Bengals have been blown out in back-to-back weeks and nearly lost to the Jaguars. I mean, we're talking about a team that could potentially be 1-3 for the umpteenth year in a row at this point. But they beat Jacksonville 31-27 in a game where Joe Burrow goes out, and we saw Jake Browning play more than half that game. But then they lose to the Vikings 48-10 in week 3 and then 28-3 on Monday Night Football. To be outscored 70-something to 13 over the last 2 games, it highlights a lot of things. It highlights that their defense stinks. It highlights that they can't protect the quarterback. It highlights that they can't run the football. And now it highlights the fact that they can't throw the football. Now they find themselves in a position where they return home this weekend, and they have the Lions coming to town. And the Cincinnati Bengals have to find a way, all right, to get back on track here. They have to find a way, all right, to get back in the W column. And actually, to be honest, I know this sounds crazy. I don't even think for the Bengals it's about winning this week. It's about looking like you're a competent football team. If they lose this week, they're 2-3. That's not a great record. And if they lose this week, that's their third straight. Losing without Joe Burrow is never a surprise. Losing the way they've lost without Joe Burrow the last 2 weeks is because it almost puts off the impression that the Bengals have quit. You could sympathize with the Bengals if they're losing close games without Joe Burrow because you'd like to think that with Joe Burrow, they win those ones. But even with Joe Burrow, you're giving up 48 points to the Vikings. Maybe you put up 30-35. You're still losing that game. The Broncos defense just absolutely ate that offense for lunch. Even with Joe Burrow, maybe you put up 17 more points, lose 28-20. There's no way you're going to convince me that Joe Burrow out there makes up a 25-point differential. There's no way you're going to convince me that Joe Burrow makes up a 38-point differential in the loss against the Vikings. This team has problems. And now you're coming up on a week against the Lions. Look, we know that the front office for the Cincinnati Bengals, they are stubborn to a fault when it comes to firing head coaches. I'm not really advocating to fire Zach Taylor, but my goodness, when you look at the fact that the Bengals have to play the Lions this weekend, by the way, the Bengals are a 10.5-point dog at home. Then they're going to go on the road against Green Bay, who Green Bay's been humbled a little bit the last couple of weeks, but keep in mind, it is one of those situations where like the Vikings, they made the Vikings look top notch. They made the Broncos. I mean, the Broncos are solid, but my goodness, they made them look like the team that had Super Bowl expectations in the Broncos coming into the season. If they get blown out against the Lions and the Packers and they have 4 straight blowout losses, not just 4 straight losses, but embarrassing blowout losses, I don't really know how Zach Taylor does keep his job. He will keep his job. He's not going to lose his job, but I just don't understand what happens from here if the Bengals get demolished on Sunday. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Treg, what up? Treg says, unfortunately, I can't even bring up the Bengals. But speaking on the Browns, Shador, why is everyone mad that he did the Phantom Mime thing interview? Like he's an issue. The reporters are hitting the locker room to go to him, don't want him in the media, then don't go to him. But they can't help themselves. It's a story, but honestly, it's not. No one cares except Ryan Clark. And don't get me started on Ryan Clark, Dreg. I'm not even Ryan Clark has me blocked on social media for a reason because I've let Ryan Clark know I'm not a big Ryan Clark guy. I'm not a big Ryan Clark fan. And then he knows it and he blocked me. But that's besides the point. We're going to get to the Browns in a moment. I do think the Shador stuff's being overblown a little bit with the mime stuff. I have no problem with Shador getting criticized because he has to know that when he does stuff like this, he knows it's going to get attention. So you can't do stuff like this to get attention and then act like, wait a minute, why is everyone getting on my case about this? So you can't have it both ways, but we'll get to that in a moment. But the Bengals, again, 937-518-1410. I'll open up the phone lines. If the Bengals lose in blowout fashion this week for the 3rd straight week, is Zach Taylor's seat boiling hot? Now, you can argue that it already is. But if you're going to argue that his seat is boiling hot, then does that mean he's in danger of losing his job after this Sunday? Because if you can't convince me that he's in danger of losing his job after Sunday if they get blown out 3 straight weeks, then his seat's not boiling. I had a buddy ask me that earlier today. Do you think that the seat is hot for Zach Taylor? And I'm like, I don't know if it is. I don't know how many head coaches can look. Again, you could say he gets a pass because he's without Joe Burrow. But if you're losing semi-close games, then fine. But they're not even like trying. I mean, Jamar Chase said as such. He said that the energy is not there. I mean, they're not even coming out looking like they want to play football. That is a problem. That means they have quit. And when your team quits 3 weeks into the season, or 4 weeks into the season, and you have all of October, all of November, all of December left to be played, that's a problem. That's a problem. We went from, man, if they could just hang on until Joe Burrow gets back mid-December to, man, I wonder who they're going to draft in the top 3 next year. Man, their fortunes have changed quickly. But that's the question I have for you. Leave it in the chat, the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page or ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. Head there now. What happens if the Bengals if they have their 3rd straight blowout loss against the Lions on Sunday? And do we not even need to worry about that? Do you believe the Bengals could bounce back? They lost 48-10 against the Vikings in week 3, 28-3 against the Broncos this past Monday on Monday Night Football, and they have the Lions and the Packers the next 2 weeks. It could get ugly against Detroit. They're 10.5-point dogs at home. It's one thing to be a 10.5-point dog on the road, but my goodness, what would that line be if the Lions had the Bengals in Detroit? And then to go to Green Bay, I mean, that could be a bloodbath as well. You have Micah Parsons going up against that offensive line, against Jake Browning. You look at Hutchinson and you look at the pass rush of the Lions going up against that offensive line and Jake Browning, who's not even good when they protect him at this point. And I am kind of curious, too, what has happened to Jake Browning, because I'm not going to sit here and act like he's elite or anything, but he's not this bad, right? We've seen enough of Jake Browning to know that he's not this bad of a quarterback. So that's why I'm like wondering, too, is this a problem that goes beyond just the quarterback? Ron Howard says the Brown family is too cheap to let him go. They'll eat this one. The Brown family is looking at this as if you have Joe Burrow, you're competing for the playoffs. If you don't have Joe Burrow, you're competing for a top draft pick. The Brown family's happy with this. I really, truly believe there's part of me that deep down feels like they're content with this. I told you guys earlier in the week, this almost felt like the front office is sitting back and letting this team drown on purpose. Because I told you, I feel like Duke Tobin, I feel like Katie Blackburn, I feel like the Brown family, I feel like they got bullied by the players in the offseason. They got bullied to keep T. Higgins. They didn't want to keep T. Higgins. They got bullied and pressured into the Trey Hendrickson thing because They said, we did our part. You guys tell us to get these contracts done early. We did that. We restructured the contract with Trey Hendrickson 2 years ago so that we can have a dominant pass rusher on a cheaper deal to allocate dollars elsewhere. And instead of praising them for that, you made us look bad. You agreed to this cheaper deal and then made us look bad on the back end. I think they're angry. I think that I think that they're looking at everyone saying, you wanted this. This is what you get. You wanted us to overpay for, by the way, it's their fault they overpaid for Jamar Chase, but you wanted us to overpay on a number 2 wide receiver, fine. You wanted us to overpay on a 30-year-old pass rusher, fine. You want Mike Gesicki, you want Noah Fant, you want all this stuff, fine. We gave you everything you wanted. Oh, and now you want more? Yeah, I don't know. Javi says they need to fire the defensive coordinator. First of all, we're 4 weeks in. I'm not even calling to the fire of the defensive coordinator. I think they need to suffer with this one. I told you guys at the beginning, and I was a hater. I said they were wrong for hiring Al Golden. I think it was the wrong hire. I think it was the wrong decision. They felt the pressure of losing and missing the playoffs for 2 straight years. So they blamed Lou Anarumo. And instead of the front office saying, we believe in Lou Anarumo, and we're going to do a better job at getting some better pieces in here for Lou Anarumo's defense, a defense that has proven to be effective when he has the right pieces in place. Instead, they let Lou Anarumo go. And now Lou Anarumo, he has the Colts as a top 10 defense in the NFL right now. They're sitting there, right there, just hovering around the top 10. The Colts are doing fine defensively. The Bengals, the only 2 defenses worse than the Bengals are the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Ravens. Those are the only defenses worse than the Cincinnati Bengals as we currently sit here right now. The Bengals should have stuck with Lou Anarumo, made it a point to go improve on the defensive end personnel-wise, not the coach, player-wise, not personnel-wise with the coach. That was wrong. And I said it before, that Notre Dame, they weren't worried about losing their defensive coordinator to multiple teams. There was just one team that was trying to pluck him away. Just one. The second they let go of Lou Anarumo, it was like when you throw a little piece of food in the pond and all the fish just come swarming at it. That was what happened with Lou Anarumo. When you throw a little piece of bread or something in the water and all the fish just come swarming at it, that's what people did with Lou Anarumo. When you do something like that, that means you're throwing something of value away. The Bengals didn't look at it that way. They're the ones sitting there as, hey, there's a piece of bread over there. No one else is going after that. We should go after that one. Yeah, no one wanted. That's the path of least resistance. That was the most Bengals move ever. But it is what it is. Javi says somebody's going to get fired if they get blown out again this weekend. Guys, I don't think they're going to just get blown out this weekend. I think they're going to get blown out the next 2 weekends. And there's a lot of bad teams in the NFL. There's just not many that are getting their doors blown off week in and week out. The Dolphins looked really, really bad for a minute there, but they've looked, they're coming off a 27-21 win. They were competitive. Even when they lost to the Bills, it was by 10. It was semi-competitive. They lost to the Patriots. It was the only blowout loss the Dolphins had was that horrific loss that they had to the Colts. They're 1-3, but they're still competitive in these losses. The Dolphins look horrible. They're still competitive in these losses. The Bengals aren't even being competitive right now. It looks like they have quit. The New York Jets, the Jets lost 34-32 in week 1. That's competitive. They lost 29-27 against the Buccaneers. They're competitive. The Dolphins, they just lost 27-21 against the Dolphins last week. Guess what? The Jets, they're competitive. They're 0-4. You have that fan base that's questioning if they have the right coach or not because they're 0-4, but they're not quitting. They're competitive. They're losing games late. The Bengals aren't losing games late. They're losing games early. And that's the concern. Adam Selsner, what up, Adam? He says, based on the upcoming trial we're going to the Deshaun stuff. We're going to get to the Browns in a moment. I promise. We'll get to the Browns stuff in a moment. Bengals. So Adam says the Bengals owners have their bottom line of what they know they need to spend, and they have their top line of what they will not spend. After this season, they will have their roster back into their level of comfortable money. No doubt about it. Ron Howard says Marvin Lewis sure looks good about now. The team wasn't quitting on Marvin Lewis. They're quitting on Zach Taylor. And I've said this before. I'm not a Zach Taylor guy, but I'll defend Zach Taylor. I think people, in the past, because in the past they were competitive without Joe Burrow. They've been competitive. He's led them to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow puts up these numbers in a Zach Taylor offense. We can't sit here and say, my gosh, look how great Joe Burrow looks in this offense, and then not give any credit to the guy that's calling the offense. I think that's absolute stupidity on anyone's part to not give Zach Taylor credit. But right now, I can't give him any credit. This team has straight up quit on him. It's only 2 weeks, but it has the potential to bleed into 4 straight games when you have the Lions that you're a 10.5-point dog against, and you have the Packers in Green Bay a week from Sunday. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll pick up with this more when we come back. I'll continue to read the chat. If the Bengals get blown out on Sunday by the Lions for the 3rd straight week, will Zach Taylor make it through this season? Is his seat even? I had a friend ask me, is his seat even hot right now? And I said, I don't think it. If you don't think you're in danger of being fired, I don't think your seat is hot. Is his seat hot? I think it's going to be boiling hot if they lose in blowout fashion for the 3rd straight week. We'll pick up with this. We'll get to the Cleveland Browns coming up around the corner as well. The Dillon Gabriel era about to get underway. How long will it last? We'll get to all of that more. The Justin Kinner Show when we come back.
Justin Kinner Show. 1410 Wing AM.
All right, and we are back. I'm Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. We opened up talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, we know it has not gone well without Joe Burrow the last 2 weeks, and by not gone well, I mean they don't even look like a competitive football team. And they have the Lions coming up on Sunday. It's a game that's going to kick off at 4:25 on Fox, and they're at home. The Lions are in town. The Lions are 3-1. Lions are pretty dang good. The Bengals are pretty dang not good. And the Bengals at home are a 10.5-point dog. I mean, it's one thing to be a 10.5-point dog on the road. Obviously, a lot of points are kind of shifted in favor of the home team in that regards. But to be at home and be a 10.5-point dog, I can't imagine what this line would be if the Bengals were at Detroit. But the Bengals are fighting for a lot more than just to win. I think that I'm not even advocating that the Bengals, for one, they need to win. Everyone needs to win. They could lose Sunday and it still look like they're a competitive football team. And I think that's the very least of what you should be hoping for. The most, yes, you hope for a win. Hopefully the Bengals without Joe Burrow can go and beat one of the hottest teams in football in the Lions. But what you don't want is, what you want to leave Sunday feeling like is, all right, the Lions are pretty dang good. We don't have Joe Burrow, but we were very competitive with them. We play like we did today. We could hang with most teams and have a chance to win each week. You show up the way you did against the Vikings, and you show up the way you did against Denver. And when I say when you show up like you did against those teams, what I mean is not, if you do anything other than what you have done, which is not show up at all, and you get your doors blown off for the third straight game, and you're at home this time, I don't know how Zach Taylor survives that. I just don't. I don't even know what the front office would do. This is such a tough spot for the Bengals to be in because it's so early in the season at this point, and there's so much more left to do. You can't continue to get your doors blown off like this each and every week. It's one thing you got your doors blown off by the Vikings in week 3. You could have countered with a competitive game on Monday Night Football, and all would have been forgotten. But, I mean, they were not – I mean, I know they beat the Browns in week 1. They didn't even look they didn't even look competitively coherent at all in week 1. They backdoored their way into a win. Looked better in week 2, and they've given up in weeks 3 and 4. But to look as bad as they have in 3 of the 4 weeks, and that's the one thing I talked about with Jason Fitz earlier in the week when he came on. I said, I don't get it. It's not like when Joe Burrow went out injured against the Jaguars that the offense fell apart. Like, we watched, all right, Jake Browning come into the game. We watched that offense still make its way up and down the field. Jamar Chase still put up big numbers in that game, even without Joe Burrow. And it's like, okay, that's what we've seen. We've seen, not really from Jamar Chase, but we've seen the offense look competent without Joe Burrow. We've seen Jake Browning have a winning record before this year without Joe Burrow. We've seen this offense continue to click without him. So what happened from that point of that Jaguars game to now where all of a sudden this team just stopped being able to move the football? To me, it's not a talent thing. I think that this team has just quit. And what are they quitting on? Did the fact that Joe Burrow's not, I mean, and I know this sounds like I'm blaming Burrow, but I'm not. But it's almost like because Burrow's out and he's not there, they've just said, we've had enough. We're tired of the waiting game. We're tired of waiting for Burrow to get healthy. We're tired of waiting for him to be here. And then when he gets here, then he's out again for a long period of time. The emotional up and downs, I'm sure that wears on a team. When you finally get your quarterback back, you finally have a full healthy offseason, you're finally ready, and then he's out again. It's like just not being able to fully count on your quarterback does not help. Zach Taylor not being able to fully rely on his quarterback does not help. Oh, what do you mean they can't rely on Joe Burrow? He's never available, guys. Like last year, even when he was available, the team had too many other problems to deal with as well. Like there's just always something with this team. It's always the offensive line, or it's always the defense. It's always a wrist. It's always a pinky. It's always a toe. It's always an appendectomy. It's just always something. At some point, that has to just wear on everybody. And it looks like the players have just said, we're tired of always trying to grind through. We're always trying to grind through not having a good defense. We're trying to grind through our offensive line being bad. We're trying to grind through Joe Burrow not being here. And I think this team's just tired of grinding. I think the team's just tired of grinding, at this point. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what team comes out on Sunday. Look, the Bengals are not better than the Lions. That I know. But if they can go out there and look competitive on Sunday, that should make you feel good as a Bengals fan that, okay, there's still some fight left. But I'd have to imagine if they get embarrassed again on Sunday for the third straight week, I don't know how you can continue cheering this team on the rest of the way. Not that you boo them. I just mean I don't know how you continue to stay invested in this team after this week. If they get their doors blown off this week, I don't know how you stay invested. I don't. And I need you to, because we're going to talk Bengals every week. And I need listeners, I need you fans to be invested into this team. So if you think I'm rooting for this, I'm not. I root for the Bengals to lose. I don't root for them to quit. Oh, local host, rooting for the Bengals to lose. Yes. As a fan, as a Browns fan, yes, I do. I root for the Bengals to lose. I do. Sue me. Oh, well. But what I don't root for is for them to quit, because then it's hard to talk about them. It's hard to talk about something that you guys don't give two rips about, which is why we don't talk Reds usually post-July. But that's what made this year so kind of cool. We talked about the Reds in July, August, and September, and hell, even a couple of days of October. How cool was that, right? So, yeah, if you guys think I'm enjoying this, I'm not. Treg said it correctly. It's hard to watch. Even like last year, the Bengals were losing, but it wasn't like they would lose to the Ravens and we'd come in. It wasn't hard to talk about. It was hard to accept. It would piss you guys off, but you were emotionally invested because you're this close. You can't be invested in this stuff. You can't be emotionally invested into what we're seeing right now. That's tough. That's tough. Chad, what up, Chad? Zach Taylor makes Kevin Stefanski look like the offensive guru that some Browns fan act like he is. Oh, I'm going to get into Kevin Stefanski and the Browns coming up here in this next part of the show. Don't worry, Chad. Yes, I've been a Zach Taylor defender, and I'm backing off of that. I've also been a Kevin Stefanski defender. I'm backing off that slowly as well. That's why I think a lot's right. I think this Sunday is humongous for both Browns and Bengals. Like Kevin Stefanski, I'm always told if the quarterback's right, he's right. The team's right. Because that was the track record at first. We've seen it when he had Baker Mayfield. They looked really good when he was healthy. When they had younger Joe Flacco, they were really good, right? Like Deshaun was the outlier. He won games, with bad quarterbacks. They found ways to win games. They're not finding ways to win games anymore. And then you look at Mac Jones and what's happening in San Francisco, and you look at the fact that they're winning with Brock Purdy, and they just win with no matter who's back there. Yeah, we're going to get into the Browns more in a moment. But then you have the Bengals who are trying to prove that they haven't quit on the season coming up on Sunday. So who knows what's going to happen at the end of the day. But we shall see. All right. Ron Howard, my goodness, government jobs are safer than Taylor's job. What is wrong with you, Ron? What? Oh, I hate when Ron makes it funny because I got nothing. Look, I'm not laughing at people who've lost their job, but that's a pretty strong point, right? That Zach Taylor's job is in date. I got nothing. I'm going to stay away from that one, Ron. I'm not trying to tick people off today, as far as that goes, but and Treg says, welcome to Cincinnati, Caleb Downs. Like, that's the thing, too. Like, the front office, everyone's screaming for them to go get a backup quarterback or to go get a replacement quarterback. I don't know if they want to. Do they really want to go get a Jameis Winston so that they could win 7 games, 8 games, and pick at 17 like they did last year? Do they really want to do that? And by the way, people, I remember working with the guys over at Chatterbox, and I gave them my draft take. I said I was tired of incentivizing losing. When you incentivize losing, you get these kinds of situations where teams are like, I'm not even going to try to compete because we'll be rewarded for being embarrassingly bad. But if you did the reverse draft order that I talked about, it would put the Bengals in a situation of, hey, we're not going to win a Super Bowl without Joe Burrow, but if we could win 8, 9, 10 games, that's going to improve our draft stock of getting, winning more games. You improved your draft stock versus losing more games. Punish those who stink and reward those who try. And the fact that the Bengals could go out there and make a move right now to improve this team and make them more competitive and enjoyable for you to watch, they're going to sit back and watch this team drown because, hey, it might improve our draft stock and we can go get Caleb Downs. Stop incentivizing losing. But while they are incentivizing losing, good for the Bengals. Yes, there's a good chance that this all could technically work out. There's a good chance that the Bengals, with being so bad right now and being as bad as they are, if Shamar Stewart pans out and then in this draft you get a Caleb Downs, and back-to-back drafts you get your dominant pass rusher with a great safety like that, oh my goodness. All of a sudden, the rest of the puzzle pieces become easier to put together. But they have a lot of problems. That secondary, we'll see. All right, let's pick up with this and the Browns talk when we come back. The Cleveland Browns, are we about to see the start of a long quarterback era in Cleveland with Dillon Gabriel, or is this just about to be different name, same movie? Let's find out. We'll talk about this when we come back. The Dillon Gabriel era kicks off on Sunday. How long do we anticipate that to last? We'll get to all of that when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits.
You'd save in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Coverage is not available in all states or for all vehicles and coverage selections.
Ohio State will be back in action tomorrow night, of course. They welcome in Minnesota for a 7:30 kickoff, and at 6 o'clock pregame coverage will begin right here on 1410 ESPN Radio and our sister station. How about Z93? Z93 made its return yesterday. Ohio State returns home. Z93 returns to its home. We're pretty excited about that. All Buckeye games can be heard right here on 1410 Wing AM and, of course, Z93. So how about that? Pretty excited about that return that happened yesterday, but all Buckeye games will continue to remain on WGTZ, which is now Z93 once again. So pretty cool. But we also have high school football tonight. High school football, week 7. I don't know how the heck the season. I feel like we just had week 1. I say this every year, but it's like you wait all year for football to get here, and then within a blink of an eye, the season's wrapping up. I mean, after tonight, we'll be 70% of the way through the regular season. Playoffs about to get underway here in the next month. So kind of exciting too, as the temperature's starting to change, the playoff picture's starting to heat up. Keep in mind, it used to be was it 16 teams per region? It just felt like everyone, you had 2-win teams making the playoffs. You had just teams under 500 making the play. It was ridiculous. Pretty much every team was making the postseason. You should never have that many teams who weren't, able to get to 500 on the season competing for a state championship. That's crazy to me. So now that number has shrunk, and now less teams have a chance to make the playoffs, which means not as many teams are safe. So if you're hovering around 500, depending on the point system, depending on the, type of teams you've played, you may have a winning record. You might be close to the fringe line. You may have, be under 500 by a game. Years past, you'd be fine. I think that makes these games a lot more intense as we're getting closer and closer to the finish line. Tonight, we have Beaver Creek and Springboro going head-to-head for our Week 7 game of the week. Adam Campbell and Josh Copeland will have the call for that one coming up here later on tonight. 7 o'clock to kick off. It's our Week 7 Gridiron game of the week. How about Beaver Creek? They're 3-3 on the season. They're 2-1 in GWalk play. They're welcoming in Springboro. Springboro 3-3 as well, but they're 1-2 in GWalk play. So this is a big one coming up here later on this evening. I know that Beaver Creek got beat up last week by Centerville, unfortunately. Great start to the season. They want to keep that going. They have a counter opportunity here tonight against Springboro, and we'll have that for you. Springboro coming off of a loss against Springfield last week as well. So 7 o'clock to kick off right here, 1410 ESPN Radio, our Gridiron Week 7 game of the week coming up. We opened up the show talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals have lost back-to-back weeks, and not just losing in back-to-back weeks, but getting their doors blown off in back-to-back weeks. Absolutely getting embarrassed. And, every year it's like the same thing. I'm sure it's every fan base. But I feel like Cincinnati, if you are a fan of a professional sports team in Cincinnati and things don't go your way, you're the quickest thing. And maybe this is most fan bases. I just don't feel like it is with every fan base calls for their head coach's job at some point, but you guys do this all the time. Oh, it's over the top. Zach Taylor helped lead the team to a Super Bowl one year. The very next year, he took him to the AFC Championship game as well. But even in that season, a year after going to the Super Bowl, fans were calling for his head. Bengals fans, you're always calling for Zach Taylor's head. Terry Francona is a Hall of Fame manager. In my opinion, one of the best, if not the best manager in baseball today. And people always say, there's no way Terry Francona is the best manager in baseball today. Look at all the mistakes he made. Who's a good manager? I'll wait. Who's a good manager? Because the Chicago Cubs moved on from what we thought was a good manager to go get Counsell, an elite manager. And look what's happened with, the Cubs are in the playoffs. Still, don't get me wrong, but the Cubs haven't gotten better because they made a big managerial change. The Reds had the same roster for the last couple of years. Bring in Terry Francona, boom, they're in the postseason. You fans want Terry Francona gone. That's your answer to everything. Fire the coach, fire the manager, no matter what. Yeah, we know the roster's not good. Doesn't matter. It's the head coach's fault. Yeah, we know. And that's where I've always been when it comes to Zach Taylor. The strength, at least if he was a defensive coordinator and he was the head coach, or if he was a defensive minded coach and he was the head coach, yeah, I would say that something's not clicking there. If he's a defensive minded coach and yet that's the worst part of their roster, that's a problem. But Zach Taylor was brought in years ago because anybody that, it was that offensive movement, that Sean McVay movement, any coach that even shared a cup of coffee within a five foot radius of him got head coaching job. Zach Taylor was not deserving of a head coaching job at that time. No offense to him, but he just wasn't. But because everyone wanted a young coach that was going to have some of those Sean McVay principles to help bring to the table, and it worked. You just needed the right quarterback to execute the game plan. And you can't sit here and say that Zach Taylor's offensive prowess has not worked in Cincinnati. Even up until this year, when Joe Burrow has been out, that offense keeps clicking. In the second half against Jacksonville, without Joe Burrow, that offense kept clicking, which is why I kept defending Zach Taylor. And then something happened. Something happened after that Jacksonville game because it has led to this team basically quitting because there is no offensive firepower anymore. There's no offensive effort. There's nothing. And the Lions are coming up. They're a 10.5-point favorite on the road in Cincinnati. And if the Lions blow out the Bengals, it will be the third straight blowout loss. I've defended Zach Taylor because I've said this team competes even when they lose Burrow. They compete without their quarterback, and that means that he has not lost the locker room. The second you lose the locker room, I'm out on you. I've defended Zach Taylor because he has never lost the locker room, and I feel like he has lost the locker room as we sit here today. And that's what this Sunday brings is an opportunity for the Bengals to prove that they have not lost that Zach Taylor has not lost the locker room. Because if he has, and they get their arses whooped against the Lions, now you have to go on the road at Green Bay. It's only going to get worse. And Pittsburgh, I don't fear their defense, but Pittsburgh will blow out. I mean, Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf will throw all over that Bengals defense. So, yeah, I think it can get ugly in the next three. It could be ugly the rest of the season. As far as the Browns go, Cleveland's in an interesting spot. They're going to be on the road. Not really on the road. The Vikings and Browns both technically on the road. A 9:30 a.m. kickoff coming up this Sunday on the NFL Network. Browns considered the home team, of course, but they are a 3.5-point dog against the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota will throw out their backup quarterback in Carson Wentz once again. And read today, too, that the Vikings are going to be without three of their offensive starters on the offensive line, and they are very banged up. They have a lot of key guys out. Their starting quarterback, the majority of their offensive line. And to be honest, Carson Wentz, say what you want about him, but I would rather play J.J. McCarthy. I wish J.J. McCarthy was healthy. If people say, oh, man, you're playing the Vikings with the backup quarterback. I'm like, yeah, I'm bummed. I wish it was J.J. McCarthy. I wish he was healthy. I wish that bum was healthy. I wish that cheating national champion was healthy, to be quite honest with you. I would love to see that cheater, get demolished by Myles Garrett. I think, I would love that, but that's besides the point. It's a big game on Sunday because the Browns finally, after a bad outing, one of many bad outings by Joe Flacco this season last Sunday, and the Browns loss against the Lions, who the Bengals are playing this week, they made a quarterback change. Dillon Gabriel is going to be rolled out there. And I feel like the Browns sit here at 1-3, and I think that they look at the AFC North. They look at the fact that the Bengals seem to be going nowhere. The Bengals are I joked with Jason Fitz earlier in the week. I'm like, who do you think finishes the season with more wins, the Browns or the Bengals? And we both agreed the Browns are going to finish the season with more wins than the Bengals based on what we've seen. The Browns have an identity to them. The Browns are going to have a chance to win football games because of that defense. If I ask you right now, the Bengals have a chance to win football games every week because of what? What is that answer? Because they can't run the football. So you can't say, well, because their run game, they're going to be able to remain. No, they can't pass the football anymore. They sure as hell can't play defense. That's the problem. Like the Cincinnati might, when it's all said and done, they might with the Saints be the worst team in football, which is crazy. Cleveland has that defense that they can if they win on Sunday, it's going to be because of the defense. However, what they are hoping for is a spark on the offense with, of course, making the debut of Dillon Gabriel. I don't know what to make of Dillon Gabriel. I will say that, of course, there's no flash. There's no charisma. There's no it factor with them. And I don't think that matters. And I think that actually might be a good thing. I think the fact that, we've seen the Baker Mayfield, the personality, it not work. We've seen the personality of, obviously, Shedeur Sanders, and that's not working either. We've seen that the dull, boring quarterbacks, the personality of Deshaun Watson, the flashiness of him, that doesn't work. Joe Flacco was a dull, boring quarterback, when he was a few years younger, not an ancient relic like he is now. It worked. Right? Like we've seen Stefanski win games that, with these quarterbacks who were effective in the pocket. Baker was when he wasn't running his mouth, of course, and wasn't hurt. Joe Flacco, he won with Joe Flacco, coming off the couch in the middle of the season with no training camp, won football games, made the playoffs. Like there's a question mark now, though. Is Kevin Stefanski still this quarterback whisperer that everyone thought he was when he started out in Cleveland? Because I'm watching the 49ers last night. Mac Jones, who we thought was just his career was dead and out, he comes in to replace Brock Purdy, who just got paid $50-something million a year, and he looks pretty dang good. 49ers are 4-1. They're without Brock Purdy, and they're not missing a beat. Mac Jones last night he completed 33 of his 49 pass attempts for 342 yards and 2 touchdowns. He only got sacked once. He didn't turn it over. It's not like, Mac Jones is the quarterback, but they're leaning into Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey touched the ball 22 times last night. He only rushed for 57 yards. He averaged 2.5 yards a carry. He was basically non-effective. Hell, Mac Jones ran the ball 4 times for 5 yards. Like Mac Jones is probably this year's Sam Darnold at this point. And it's one of those things where the system, throw the quarterback in there. It's the system. Well, we're going to find out just how good Kevin Stefanski's system is, because if Dillon Gabriel can go out there and be effective against the Vikings, I think the Browns have a chance to turn this around. They see how the Bengals are basically hopeless in this division. They see a vulnerable Ravens team that is going to be without Lamar Jackson. Some reports are saying 2 weeks to a month. That's a Ravens team that's already 1-3, just like Cleveland. They have a lot of losses ahead of them. There could be a lot of losses ahead for Cleveland, but if they can stockpile some wins, if the quarterback situation is fixed, and it might be with Dillon Gabriel, they can run the football. I'm questioning their pass catchers at this point, but I like, Harold Fannin Jr. I'd like to see if David Njoku has anything left, right? Jerry Jeudy, maybe this is the change that he needed at quarterback. We'll see. And then the Steelers, who are very, very solid right now, can they sustain it? This is a team that started out 4-2 last year and ultimately tailspun at the back end. So I think they're in a situation right now where if Dillon Gabriel goes out there and it works, Cleveland all of a sudden has the best situation in the AFC North, which is absolutely crazy, because Pittsburgh, as solid as they have looked, it's not like they've been lights out offensively. They've been pretty bad defensively. They've just been able to edge some bad teams. Good coaching. Can't believe I'm saying that. Can't stand saying that. But very, very good coaching. And, of course, Aaron Rodgers, he hasn't been elite, but he's been very, very good. He's been very, very good in these games. You look at what Aaron Rodgers was able to do in that first game, obviously against the Jets when he threw for 244 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? Like he did that in week 1. Obviously, he kind of disappeared a little bit in that week 2 game against the Seahawks when he threw for 203 yards. He did throw 2 interceptions in that one. Wasn't great. They beat the Patriots in week 3, right? And Aaron Rodgers in that game, he only threw for 139 yards, a touchdown, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And then you look at last week. Again, he wasn't lights out. But he made big plays down the stretch. Aaron Rodgers threw for 200 yards and a touchdown. This offense isn't elite. They're not an elite running team. They can't run the football at a extremely high clip. Now, they did rush for 131 yards last week. Kenneth Gainwell, 2 touchdowns on the ground. So they're just a solid team. Pittsburgh is a solid team. They're not an elite team. They are solid. Cleveland gets the quarterback right. They have an elite defense. There is not one side of the ball in the AFC North that is as dominant as what the Cleveland Browns have in that defense. And if Dillon Gabriel goes out there and he is effective and he's moving that ball and he's not and that's the other thing. All he has to do is just not turn it over. Get some first downs, get them in a field goal range, convert a couple touchdown drives, and the Browns will be fine with that defense. In the AFC North, the Bengals aren't going anywhere. The Ravens are running in place right now until they get Lamar back. And even with Lamar, they're 1-3. And the Steelers have just been benefiting from playing bad teams to start at this point. Don't want to take anything away from them, though, because they've been solid. I don't think the Browns, if they get the quarterback right, are as bad as what everyone says they are. But again, I can't be a Browns apologist because they do this to themselves at the end of the day. Chad Penrod says, does it sound crazy that I trust Gabriel more than Stefanski? Stefanski is 3-17 in the last 20. He scored 20 points or less in 20 of the last 23. Chad, I could tell you're a Stefanski guy, huh? He said he's 9 straight games of 17 or less points. He's lost all creativity in his play calling. I can't name a player that this guy has actually developed. With that said, Browns win Sunday because the defense, Minnesota, is way too banged up front. Chad, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. I've been a Stefanski defender, but like you can't. This is what I said earlier about Zach Taylor. Remember when I said Zach Taylor is an offensive-minded guy. He was brought to Cincinnati to lighten up this offense, and he did. This team wins games because of their offense. That's why they won games last year. They got to the Super Bowl because of that offense and the defense. But we all know how good Joe Burrow and it's an offensive-minded team, and it should be. That should be your strength when you have an offensive-minded head coach. Cleveland is the opposite. They are not an offensive-minded team whatsoever. They want to be, but they just don't have the personnel to do it. And that's on Kevin Stefanski at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. If they can't beat a team that's as depleted as the Vikings are on Sunday with having a top 3 defense in the NFL, and they have a solid run group now. I love the fact that Quinshawn has been a difference maker since coming back. But the biggest problem for Cleveland is even when they start moving the ball, the turnovers. If Dillon Gabriel cannot turn the ball over, I think Cleveland is going to win on Sunday, and I think Cleveland's going to have a chance to win some games moving forward. I think they'll have a chance to beat Pittsburgh, as crazy as that sounds. Don't turn the ball over. That defense is not very good for Pittsburgh. They'll be able to move the ball, but don't have drives that stall because you turn the ball over, something that Joe Flacco was doing way too often. They'd get the ball, you just can't have that. And the defense for the Browns is good, but when you constantly put them in position where you're turning the ball over and putting the opposing offense in scoring territory right off the bat, it's not a good situation for either side of the ball. I'm fascinated to see what happens. I don't know if Dillon Gabriel is the answer or not, but I said this before. Stefanski knows his job is on the line. So if your job is on the line and you tell your front office, I want to cut the line and get Dillon Gabriel, you better see something in him that nobody else does. And what you see in him better be right. And that's why I'm going to trust Stefanski, because I'm going to trust the guy that his job is on the line and he sees something. He didn't force that Deshaun Watson thing. He didn't force that. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. But I think they win on Sunday. I think they beat the Vikings. They're a 3.5-point dog. But I think right now, let's see, Myles Garrett came out today and said you would not think that this kid's a rookie based on how he's looking in practice right now. That's cool to hear. That's cool to see Myles Garrett coming out and speaking up on behalf of him like that. And I think that this team's ready for a change at quarterback as well. And I think they're going to feed off that. Big game for both teams on Sunday. I want to see that the Bengals still have some fight in them. And I want to see that the Browns may have got it right in the draft with the quarterback. Think about how that changes the direction of the Browns moving forward. If Dillon Gabriel looks the part, because I don't expect him to be the Browns' Joe Burrow. I don't expect him to be that. But if he could be the Browns' Brock Purdy, I mean, look what the Niners have been able to do with Brock Purdy with that elite defense. If Dillon Gabriel could be the Browns' Brock Purdy, where he's effective, he doesn't turn the ball over, he gets the ball where it needs to go, balanced by a good run game. If he could be their Brock Purdy, the Browns are going to have a chance. And that's all the Browns are looking for at this point. Do they want a Joe Burrow? Do they want a Lamar Jackson? Abso-freaking-lutely they do. I want the Joe Burrow that doesn't get hurt every time he sneezes, but that's besides the point. That's besides the point. Chad responds, I've always been a Stefanski guy, but he lost me. If a 6-time Super Bowl champion Bill Belichick can't find a job, a 2-time coach of the year better get his blank together. Yeah, the guy that's won 6 Super Bowls can't find a job. I don't think that's saying, a 2-time coach of the year, how can he not find it? Yeah. And by the way, Stefanski is a good coach, and I think that if the Browns move on from him, he will get a job again very, very soon. But I just think it might have run its course. If this doesn't work with Dillon Gabriel, I think they have to change direction. I don't know what direction that is. But they have to make a change of pace at this point. The AFC North has had Mike Tomlin, Kevin Stefanski, Zach Taylor, and Harbaugh, the longest tenured coaches in the league, which is crazy. These teams don't change coaches. And that's fine if it weren't like this. For everyone out there that says teams move on from coaches too quickly, when I look at the AFC North, and I don't see the benefit of keeping the same coach over and over and over and over. I don't know if it, the stability. Well, what is that stability providing? Because the stability I see is the same team and this making the same mistakes with the same strengths every year. How long have we talked about Cleveland? For years now, even going back to Baker Mayfield. That defense is elite. They could run the football. They need to figure out the quarterback. You get to the Deshaun Watson area. That defense is elite. They can run the football. They need to get that defense, or they need to get that quarterback figured out. You bring Joe Flacco back again. Defense is elite. They figured out a way to run the football, and they just got to get that quarterback figured out. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals. That offense is elite. That quarterback is elite. Those wide receivers are freaking good. They just got to get that offensive line and defense figured out. We've been saying that since technically the Super Bowl, right? I mean, the Super Bowl, the defense was good on the run to the Super Bowl, but that year they weren't great defensively by any means. But we've been complaining about the offensive line and the defense for years. So what does the stability at head coach actually do? At some point, you got to mix it up, get a different message in there, get different players in there, bragging about personnel. How about the Ravens? The Ravens are Super Bowl contenders every year. Great running team, explosive quarterback, great defense. They never get it done. Every year, they're the same dang story. This is the year where they've regressed mightily, though. Mike Tomlin, same thing. They're competitive. Defense is solid. Opportunistic offensively. They're just a grinded-out type of team. It's the same dang thing. The Browns are the same every year. The Steelers are the same every year. The Ravens are the same every year. The Bengals are the same every year. Spare me the, oh, man, it's great that the North is so patient with head coaches. Why? Why is it? You either get the job done or you don't. And I see 4 head coaches who have a lot of respect. Well, some do. But I'm also respect for what? What are you doing? One's won a Super Bowl. Two have won multiples. Harbaugh's won multiple Super Bowls. I get that. Obviously, you look over at Tomlin, who's won a Super Bowl. That's great. What have you done for me lately? Running in place is not something to brag about, as far as I'm concerned. All right. Oh, wow. Look at that. It's time to go into hour number 2. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll pick up with this when we come back. Browns, Bengals, big one coming up here week 4 of the NFL, week 5 of the NFL season, which is crazy that season's rolling around as well. So more coming your way. We also got some college football talk coming up next. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits.
If you need new roofing, siding or gutters, skylights or patio enclosures, if you're a homeowner,
of craft beers while watching the big game on our big screens. With locations around Dayton, in Columbus, and our newest sports bar in Kettering, you're never far from a Submarine House. Subs, sports, spirits, Submarine House. Adam Campbell and Josh Copeland will be at Beaver Creek tonight for our Week 7 Gridiron Game of the Week. 7 o'clock the kickoff, 6:45. Pregame coverage will begin right here on 1410 Wing AM. A lot of Bengals Browns talking that first hour, rightfully so. I want to go back to a comment from earlier in the show that brought up everything kind of going on with the Shedeur Sanders thing, and thought it was a good point. Shout out to Treg. I think this was the comment. Yeah. So Treg, again, we're live on the Justin Kinder Show Facebook page. Treg says he wanted to bring up about the Browns. He said, Shedeur, why is everyone mad that he phantom mimed an interview like he's an issue? The reporters are hitting the locker room to go to him. Don't want him in the media, then don't go to him. But they can't help themselves. It's a story, but honestly, it's not. No one cares except Ryan Clark and Dan run out of the end zone. Yeah, I'm talking about Orlovsky, that type of thing. Look, I agree. I think two things could be true. I think that Shedeur Sanders needs to be more aware of how he's going to be viewed in the media. And to be fair, I think he does know how he's viewed in the media, which is why he did the mime thing, basically mocking everything, saying, hey, no matter what I say, if I say anything, you're going to twist it. The mature thing would have been for him to just no comment. Just say no comment. I'm not going to speak, actually you should comment. Your fellow teammate is getting an opportunity that I'm sure you really, really want, but I'm happy for Dillon. It's been fun coming in here together. Both of us competing for, both of us want that job. We're both competing for it. And I'm happy for him and pulling for him because if he's successful, I'm successful. And then, no, it's not a non-story. We know that everything he says gets twisted. So that's why him doing the mime thing is a problem. It was just stupid. Like, it was just a childish thing to do. So what you can't do if you're Shedeur is you can't do that childish little mime thing and then be like, well, why is everyone mad at me? Because you act like a child, and when you play dumb games, you win dumb prizes, and that's what happened here. So that's on Shedeur big time. To your other point, Treg, that I agree with about the media, why are we hearing from the third-string quarterback? Why the hell are you going to the third-string quarterback? And here's the other thing. Cleveland, shut Shedeur down. I don't want to say up, down. Just not down from like the field and down from playing. Just, hey, media, we're not granting our rookie quarterback right now, who we want to solely focus on getting better and focus on the team. We are not going to grant him media access. Simple as that. Problem solved. Cleveland knows he's a walking soundbite. Then when they hear the soundbite, oh man, he just needs to be more mature. Protect him from himself. You drafted him. I don't care that it was in the 5th round. You drafted him and you kept him on the roster after a full training camp. You kept him there. He's yours. He's your problem. He's either your great quarterback or he's your problem. Either way, he's yours. And they control this too. Man, I just wish he wasn't such a distraction. Manage him. Is someone there sharing with him that, hey, we don't want you to be saying certain things, or just say no comment? Like, I know that can happen and should happen. Is it happening and he's just straight up ignoring it? I don't know. But I pray that as a Browns fan, I hope Dillon Gabriel's the guy. Let Dillon Gabriel be the guy so we could shut the door on Shedeur. Because, can you imagine Cleveland moved on from Baker Mayfield? And which, by the way, you guys are all hypocrites. Everyone that's making fun of Cleveland, like, this is my favorite thing. When Baker Mayfield has a great game, man, I bet Cleveland feels stupid. You were the same person saying Cleveland would feel stupid if they signed him to the $35 million, which at that time was a lot of money. Now, if you can get a starting quarterback for that, it's a steal. But do you guys remember that? When the Browns are about to pay Baker, man, the Browns are about to be screwed when they have to pay Baker Mayfield starting quarterback money. And now the same fans the same haters and the same fans that were saying that are the same ones saying, man, can't believe Cleveland's in this predicament because they didn't want to pay Baker Mayfield. Everyone agreed the Browns probably shouldn't have paid Baker Mayfield. Like, I don't understand why we're moving the goalposts on this one. Cleveland was stupid for almost signing him, and now they're stupid for not signing him. And I want to bring that up because I feel like if Dillon Gabriel looks solid, and then they move on from Shedeur, and then Shedeur goes on to be a star elsewhere, Everyone's going to say, see, Cleveland, what a bunch of idiots. But the Browns are idiots for drafting him. They're the idiots for playing him. They're the idiots for not playing him. They're the idiots for keeping him on the roster. They're the idiots for cutting him. They're the idiots for trading him. They're the idiots for trying to give him time to develop. I know what you're all saying. The Browns are just idiots. Oh, okay, that's fine. That's what you're saying. But you guys sound like idiots when you constantly change your take just because you think the Browns are idiots. If Shador, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. What you can't. So I want to use that Baker Mayfield example here. I think we're all in agreement. The Shador thing, it was a nice try. It was a good effort. Some believed he should have gone in the first round. Many believe that in a league where you live and die by the quarterback and every team in the NFL passed on him not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4.5 times. No one was out to get Shador. Shador's out to get himself. You even have his dad, who, by the way, his dad is supposed to be a head coach of a university that is teaching young men how to act like young men, respectful young men, not children, doing mime interviews. That's you were trying to get these guys to the NFL to be professional football players, and you're telling your team that it's okay to do mime interviews and mock the whole process? Or just your son, who, by the way, has just been a pain in the ass for years now. Got his jersey hung up on the rafters for being a game above 500 and not ever beating a top 25 team. Imagine that 50 years from now. I'm 35. So, if, I'm ever watching a Colorado game, or for whatever reason, I find myself in Boulder and decide to go to a Colorado game, and my kid says, "Hey, who's that Shador fella? There's only a couple jerseys hung up here. Who's that Shador fella?" Oh man, let me tell you, he only won one more game than he lost. He beat no good teams his entire time, and it was legendary. I mean, I don't know what you want. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Dillon, Gabriel, please put us all out of our misery with this Shador stuff and just be the guy. Because can you imagine if Shador goes out there and stinks up the joint, and then Shador does come in and looks good? Oh, it's just going to be unbearable. It'll be one of the, it's like Dillon Gabriel is going to be good and boring, which is what the Browns need. Or do you want elite and obnoxious? Because that's the potential of what Shador could be. And I don't know what I want. I think I want good and quiet. Cleveland deserves some good and quiet. They do deserve some elite, but I don't know if Cleveland can handle the obnoxious part. And that's what Shador has been. He's just been obnoxious. But I feel like if you could play, is your talent worth the noise? That's what I've always been a believer in that. Is your talent worth the noise? Right or wrong, that's how the NFL operates. Deshaun Watson, all the accusations, all the stuff that he's been accused of is disgusting. But the Browns thought his talent was worth the noise. It's kind of funny now. All the noise that comes with Deshaun Watson, he's not very good, and now all of a sudden they're distancing themselves from him because his talent's not worth the noise. If Deshaun was elite last year before the injury and was ready to come back within the next month, the Browns would be positioning themselves to get him back. But his talent's not worth the noise. Shador, your talent's not worth the noise. So be quiet. Shut up. Get better at football. And silence the doubters. Silence us. Silence yourself so that you can silence us. That's all I care about at this point. Man, I can't wait for Sunday. Can't wait for Sunday to see what happens. Javi says, trade Shador to the Bengals. He'll get his playing time and the Bengals get a backup quarterback. You already have one diva quarterback. At least you have a diva quarterback that can play. Actually, you have a diva quarterback who's capable of playing when he's healthy. He's just never available. So I don't know. But the personalities. Imagine a Joe Burrow, Shador Sanders QB room. Man, the personality. I mean, that would be two major personalities right there. Two vastly different personalities, but two big personalities nonetheless. All right, good stuff. All right, we're gonna step away. We had Paul Keels on the show yesterday, the voice of the Buckeyes. We recapped the big win over Washington. I think that's a very underrated win last week, by the way. I think Washington, when the season's done, they will have a number in front of their name. I think we'll look back and say, okay, that Texas win was huge. Okay, I think the Illinois win's going to be solid next week. I'm counting that as a win already. Maybe I shouldn't, but I would be more. I'm really disappointed that Illinois got their butts whooped by Indiana because I wanted that Illinois Ohio State matchup to be a top 10 showdown. It's not going to be. It'll be a top 25 showdown, assuming that Illinois wins this weekend. But I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen because that Washington win will be big. I think that's going to be a top 25 win against Illinois when it's all said and done. You got Penn State coming up around the corner after another bye week here shortly. So, yeah, things are starting to ramp up for Ohio State. But we talked about that Washington game. We previewed the Minnesota matchup tomorrow. We did all of that with the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels. And if you missed that conversation, we have it coming up for you next right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.